On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2006. We're going to be taking a look at Korn featuring Amy Lee, and they're going to be performing Freak on a Leash. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get Korn and Amy up on screen and see how they get on.
Something takes a part of me, something lost and never seen. Every time I start to believe, something's raped and taken from me. Life's gotta always be messing with me.
You wanna see the light?
Can't they chill and let me be free?
So do I.
Can't I take away all this pain?
You wanna see the light?
I tried to ignite all in vain. Sometimes I cannot take this place. Sometimes it's my life I can taste. Sometimes I cannot feel my face. You'll never see me fall from grace. Something takes a part of me. You and I were meant to be. All cheap for me to lay. Something takes a part of me. Feeling like a freak on a leash.
You wanna see the light?
Feeling like I have no enemies.
So do
Many
I.
times I've felt disease.
You wanna see the light?
Nothing in my life is free. Sometimes I cannot take this place. Sometimes it's my life I can't taste. Sometimes I cannot feel my face. You'll never see me fall from grace. Something takes a part of me. You and I were meant to be. All cheap for me to lay. Something takes a part of me.
And there we have it. There is so much in there. I thought I'd let it play the whole way through because it's only about 3.5 minutes or so when you have the intro taken out as well. As you probably would have gathered from the video, this is from MTV Unplugged. And when talking about this song and thinking of it as an acoustic arrangement, if you know the original, you'll know how edgy it is and how distorted and raspy the vocal is. We do have some of that in here, but then thinking of how to convert that original track to an unplugged session, and the arrangement that they've put together here is so interesting because it's still got that same feel of the original, but it goes in such a different direction in the intro straight off the bat, we have the chord voicings on the piano, and on the original track, it's just some lead guitar lines that are just being held, single notes. And there's some other notes going on as well, but there's no real chord or a call and response with one instrument like you get with the piano. So we've got the reference point of the chord and then the melody played over the top, and you also get to hear the voicing so clearly. You would have noticed how in the verse, as soon as Amy comes in with her backing vocal, she's putting a lot of air through her vocal cords in order to get that softer sound and to get those backing vocals to sit behind John Davis's lead vocal that's going on. And I have mentioned this in other videos. Then when we progress through the track, she then gets a lot more of a connected sound in the chorus to have that contrast, but then goes back to that breathy tone for the second verse. Something I want to mention about John's lead vocal here, because if you know the original recording, you'll appreciate that there's no strict melody in there in the verse, and in this performance, there is definitely melody that John has injected into the verse. It might be because Amy applying those backing vocals needs something to work off, and John is giving that, but also it makes it so much more interesting to have an acoustic arrangement with a melodic component in the verse, because it makes it different, it makes it interesting. Obviously, Korn are a heavy band. They've got that detuned sound, and it's something that really took off in the 90s with grunge and detuning the guitars, drop D to begin with, so that you had your standard tuning, and then took your low E string just down 2 frets effectively if you're playing on the guitar, which is a tone, it's 2 notes. And here we've got the whole song tuned down. If you're playing it on the guitar and you want to play along, you'll have to detune your guitar a tone, and that's every string. So with that heavier sound, that's where the attitude comes from, and very much in the 80s, bands would detune to E flat, and then it would go down to D to get even heavier, which is the case here. Taking a song that is really heavy to the acoustic stage, you think, how is this going to work in an unplugged setting? But the arrangement that they've put together here works really well, and Amy's vocal definitely adds something to it and takes it in a slightly different direction, because now you get that interaction between Amy's voice and John's voice. There was so much attitude in that original, which, interestingly, John sings that in the first chorus, and he does go for a lot of the attitude and personality of that original recording, but then in the second chorus, he's a little bit more strict with his melodic component of hitting the notes, as well as having that rasp in there and that aggression in the vocal. So it's interesting how, as the song progresses, John's just changing his vocal in that second chorus to be a little bit closer melodically with Amy in the background. Just to focus on Amy quickly, because a lot of you will know her from Evanescence, the band, and they certainly had a massive hit here in the UK that was called Bring Me to Life. And when I first heard that on the radio, Amy's voice stood out because it was that classical mezzo-soprano range that she has, and such great control and breath support that she has. But also, she's got that contemporary vibrato on there. It's not a classical vibrato. And with classical music, it's all about the drama and thinking of it on stage. In theatre, you have a wide vibrato. It is dramatic. Whereas Amy has all of that classical technique, but when she delivers her vocal, she's hitting the notes spot on. She's got all of that support, like I mentioned, but she applies a vibrato that is more mainstream, it's more contemporary, it's not classical, it's not exaggerated, it's not over the top. For example, being at number 1 in the UK for so many weeks, I think it was 5 weeks in a row, it means that it is connecting with so many people because it is accessible. People connect with that voice, and also it went so well over the top of the heavy metal backing, heavy guitars. Amy's performance is faultless from every angle, because all of that dynamic range that she goes through, changing the tone of her voice, having that breathy sound, but then getting into a connected sound, pitch perfect the whole time as well. And I also want to mention the arrangement with the strings that we have, because we get this gradual build. So we start out just with the piano at the beginning, and the vocals come in, and we then have Amy coming in with that soft backing vocal with a lot of air through the vocal cords. We get into the first chorus, and the strings start to come in, and then they stay for the second verse, and then build into that second chorus. So we've got this journey musically with the string section just coming in bit by bit to then take you to the peak of the mountain by the end of the song. Just a word on Korn as well, because this performance shows the depth of musicianship and also how sometimes the heavier genres of music get a bad rap and people might not necessarily be that into it, but people do sometimes write off music that they're not into. They think it's rubbish or don't give it the time of day. But there is genuine musicianship in every genre, especially the bands that make it to the top, because they wouldn't be there unless they could play and they could arrange and write great music that connects with a lot of people. Also, it shows so much of the musical side of the band. It's really interesting to hear these bands under a totally different set of circumstances than they would normally be used to. Also, just to mention about the band name, because they were originally going to be called Korn, C-O-R-N, but they didn't think it was very good. So they spelt it K-O-R-N, and they turned the R the other way around, and that's what you'll see on the logo. And it's interesting because a lot of the band members at the time worked at Toys R Us, and the R for Toys R Us was backwards, so that's where their inspiration came from. I think I read somewhere as well that the band name Korn was intentionally chosen as not really being a cool band name, because it was said that when they became really famous, they would make it a cool sounding band name just because the band would be successful, especially when you promote a cool image or something that you're producing music-wise is on the cutting edge and is very popular in the mainstream, and certainly over 35 million records sold worldwide, you can call Korn a very popular band. Another thing about Amy's vocal, in the passage where you'll hear John just saying go, and on the original track, that is the classic part. Actually, it doesn't really have any lyrical content in there. It's just lots of noises, but that's the point of the track where you imagine the mosh pit and everyone going crazy in the crowd. And what I love about this performance is the way that Amy has put together a lead vocal that sits in this spot where normally there's not a lot happening because it's really for the crowd to get into it, but taking it to an unplugged version of the song and an unplugged performance, coming up with these melody lines, they are so well put together. Another thing that Amy does during that part of the song with these vocal ad-libs is move the microphone from side to side quite quickly. So it means that the vocal isn't going straight into the mic, which means that there'll be a change in volume that happens very quickly, and it almost acts as an effect on the microphone by doing that. And anyone that's played a chord on an acoustic guitar and then kept that chord in place and swung the guitar around will be able to appreciate the change in sound that you can make. I also want to mention about this composition, the way that we lean towards particular notes, and especially Amy with that vocal ad-lib, she's going to notes that really do complement the composition and the backing. And I don't want to make things too complicated, but we are Thuringian dominant here. We're getting a sound of a scale that is often referred to as the Egyptian scale. And listening to Amy's vocal ad-libs there, you'll certainly be able to make that connection with that Egyptian sound. And it's another thing that I'll get the guitar out to demonstrate it in a second, because Amy, when she's singing these notes, she's not singing them from a position of having rehearsed it and studied a scale backstage. She's just singing these notes because they sound right over the backing, and it has the right feel to it and the right emotion for what she wants to sing at that time. Like I said, it's just an ad-lib. She's not learning the scale and then trying to remember what the notes were from the scale. So when you play this on a guitar or any instrument, just having that appreciation of where you want to go with the melody and being able to sing through the instrument is such an advantage. You'll never have to learn a scale or a mode because you're only ever playing the notes that you think will sound good over the top of the backing that you're playing with. So I've just got the guitar out, just in case you haven't got a clue what I'm on about, just to demonstrate the notes that we've got going all the way through this composition from that Phrygian dominant scale or the Phrygian mode, it doesn't matter what you call it. And you don't even need to know the scale once you can sing through your guitar, like I said, and that's all Amy's doing. She's singing her vocal extemporizations over A. So once you've got your pentatonic shape 1, those notes are very straight down the line and they just sound normal. There's no personality to them and it doesn't sound like a particular kind of music. Once you start putting in the blues, that blues scale note in there, and then starts to sound more bluesy. So with the Phrygian dominant scale, it means that we're going to sound more Egyptian. So if I play the same chord, A, and now I'm just going to play the notes from the Phrygian dominant scale, but still in the positions that I would be in with my pentatonic shape 1. And this is the great thing about playing the guitar in shapes. You can just be in your pentatonic shape 1 and then apply all of your other scales and modes over the top of that shape that you already know. So there's our reference point. So now by playing through that scale, the notes have taken on a personality and that Egyptian sound. And hopefully you can hear the difference between the two, having that straight pentatonic and the Phrygian dominant scale. It just gives it that little bit of personality. And this is the great thing, that when I'm putting these two shapes together, I'm just going from one, and you can jump between those two if you want to, if you're playing lead guitar and you want to get straight into your... and you want to end one of your lines with a little bit of that Egyptian sound, that Phrygian dominant scale, then you can do, because I haven't had to jump anywhere to find the scale, because I'm always playing the scales over the top of my pentatonic shape 1. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but this composition has got these notes dotted in and around it all the time, and if you did get the feeling that it had an Egyptian sound to it, then that is why. It's just notes from that Phrygian dominant scale. And it's interesting also how different countries all over the world and different tribes going back in the day, very far back, had different sounds and different notes that they lent towards with their music, so that when that music came out of that place, wherever it was, it had a certain personality, so that when you do put all of those notes and play them back to back in a scale, you start to get the sound of an area of the world. And it's amazing to think of it in that way. When you are playing the guitar or playing any instrument, if you can sing through your instrument, you'll never have to learn any scales. You can just go to these sounds if you want to play them at that particular point in your solo section. But a really interesting video here for so many different reasons, with being such a heavy band and taking that sound to the Unplugged stage. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!